Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Talos of Tech live on Twitch. And guess what? We got some iPad mini rumors, but they're not good. I mean, they're partially correct. Why is everyone talking about Scott Woz? Did someone quote Scott Woz? Welcome back to the stream, everyone. Thanks for joining. Basically, this report crushed my dreams, and I'm very upset by it. And part of what we were reporting on before was, I guess, somewhat accurate, but not the part we wanted to be true, which is frustrating. Yahavros3, thank you for the Twitch Prime. We'll talk about that in a second. Let me just address the main title of the stream. So this report, I was reading about it with 9 to 5 Mac. It was a report by Chance Miller, and this leak comes from Mac that said the next generation iPad mini is most likely going to have an 8.4-inch display. Okay, so this is still the first time the iPad mini is getting a different display, but the reason I'm bummed out by it is this is the part of the report from Macbook. It's a narrow frame like iPad Air 3rd generation, and the design goes with iPad 9th generation, which continues to use Touch ID and Lightning port, and this means it's going to retain the top and bottom bezels and home button. They're keeping the home button. So it's not even going to look anything like an iPad Pro, which is what we wanted all along. This is what we've been hoping for so long. Instead, it's just going to be the same old iPad mini, just with slightly slimmer bezels. And they're going to push 7.9 inches to 8.4 somehow, just by slimming some of the side bezels, which to me is significantly less interesting. That the home button, and it's also, you got to remember, this is a physical home button here. We're not even talking iPhone SE levels of solid state home button because it's an iPad. But I think this is a dumb idea. I mean, it really makes you question how much Apple actually cares about the iPad mini, because they've never really done anything major with it. Like, it feels like every single iPad mini was just kind of like except maybe the first one. It was like, okay, now there's an iPad under 8 inches. Finally, we got one. But ever since then, it's just been like, okay, I guess we'll slightly update it. We'll slightly update it. And now this is, once again, slightly updated. And I hope Mac is wrong on this, because what I would absolutely much rather prefer is what we've talked about in more recent videos of just an iPad Pro design shrunken down into a 8-inch display, so that you could technically make it pocketable, maybe not super comfortable, but I would prefer that so much more than just a same old iPad mini with a home button but still has big forehead and chin. And that's I don't want the home button to stick around. Why is this so complicated, right? Like, why can't we just abandon the home button on all the iPads except the budget one? Okay, that the iPad 9th generation, its sole purpose is to be cheap. Okay, so I understand why they're still keeping the home button there, but the mini, there's less logic there. Its sole purpose is not to be cheap. Its sole purpose is to be small but good. And I feel like there's a way you could make it small and good, but they're not doing that, which is crushing me. I can't stand it. Come on, Apple. So that was the iPad I was most excited for, but Scott says, poor iPad mini, it's like the youngest child that always gets the hand-me-downs instead of new things for himself. Yes! Thank you, Scott. It's exactly like that. The poor younger child. I'm the youngest child of 3, by the way, so I relate to the iPad mini. Anyway, answering the Twitch Prime from Yavra says, sup, Drew? No, this is the tech channel, but what are your thoughts on Tesla stock and also Bitcoin? I think we've talked about it before, but my thoughts basically on Bitcoin are, it seems like the currency of the scammer. But I know that there's legitimate money to be made in that field. It just feels very unproven right now. I don't have anything invested in crypto, and you only really hear about Bitcoin when it's doing super well, but you don't hear about it when it's tanking and leveling off and not doing very well. That's when it doesn't make the news very much. But it's not really my choice of investment. I prefer going with more high dividend index funds and different stocks like that, which we haven't even been doing it very long, but we have had pretty great success with it so far. So I just see a lot more stability and consistency from decades of research with the stock market, and Tesla stock's incredible. I don't know what inspires people to buy and make the stock rise like it does, but I do believe it is somewhat justified because of what advantages Tesla has on competition and that kind of thing. So um, I get why people are catching on and realizing Tesla's got a lot of unique and exclusive advantages over everybody else. So makes sense that everyone wants to buy in on the ground floor. I get it. A currency that shoots up in value is completely unsuitable as a currency, just as one that tanks in value. Yeah, I'd have to agree. Like, I think the people who invented Bitcoin were hoping to come up with an alternative to traditional currency, but the value of Bitcoin fluctuates so heavily that it couldn't really be used as a day-to-day currency, because no one wants to buy something for $20 and then the next day it's $40 and then after that it's $5. And if it fluctuates that much, no one wants to actually use it as a standard currency. So I think that the majority of people buying Bitcoin are buying it so that they can cash out at a later date and just have more regular US dollars. So yeah, it will probably go up in time. Fable says, did you look into Xpeng at all from my tweet? I've been working on a few other videos, so no, I didn't really get... I know who they are, and I know they were caught stealing certain stuff from Tesla, which already puts kind of a sour taste in my mouth, but no, I haven't done very much research on Xpeng as a whole, but I will. I'll look more into it in time. Paul Nair says, thoughts on the Podcast Plus, Stocks Plus, and Mail Plus services rumor. So I feel like people are misunderstanding that headline. It was someone speculating what Apple could do in the future. Okay? So there were a lot of headlines going around. I saw it in the Discord this morning, between Apple launching way more services in the future. Some were ridiculous, by the way. Can I find it? I want to pull up. Was it on 9 to 5 Mac? Someone was suggesting a bunch of alternative services Apple could end up launching, but I don't recall where I was reading it. I'm trying to scroll through here, but anyway, it's not news. It's not like a leak or anything. It's not like someone heard Apple was going to do this. Someone was just suggesting that in time Apple could end up launching more services, and here's some of what they could launch in the future. And I thought most of them were pretty stupid. Okay, it was from Loop Ventures, analyst was saying that we could see Podcast Plus offering a selection of exclusive premium shows, which I don't really know how that would work. Spotify has moved aggressively into podcasts, which is true, but they don't put them behind a paywall. All of the podcasts on Spotify are free. So I'd be very, very confused of Apple doing Podcast Plus. From what I'm aware of, I'm not like an expert in this field, but from what I'm aware of, any podcast that's held exclusively behind a subscription paywall has never done very well. All of the most popular, well-known podcasts are free to the public with ads. I don't know exactly how Apple could make a podcast service that just got rid of commercials, because that's usually embedded into the audio files, and I don't know how that could work, so it doesn't make much sense to me. Mail Plus also confuses me. I've never heard of, maybe I'm just out of touch here, but I have never heard of a subscription service for email. I don't know what it would offer. They said Mail Plus could be the first Apple service related to personal productivity, taking cues from existing services such as Invisible and Calendly. I've never heard of those. I'll be completely honest with you. You guys disagree with me, feel free if there's potential there that I'm not seeing. The only one this analyst was suggesting, again, they don't have exclusive info. They were not tipped off. This is not a leak. This is literally no different than me putting out my iPad Pro Max concept video. It's literally just one person saying, maybe Apple will do this. And some people were like, yeah, this is what Apple's going to do now. It's like, you got to read a little bit closer sometimes. I say that because sometimes I don't read closer and it backfires later. The only part of this analyst's report that actually made a little bit of sense to me, something I could see Apple doing, again, not a leak, but something I could believe if I heard about, was Stocks Plus. So I don't know if they would call it that. That name sounds pretty stupid, but the idea of it makes sense. So here's from the article. It says Stocks Plus could build upon Apple's move into personal finance with Apple Card, offering financial services such as investment accounts. And this is his side here. I think there's a lot of money to be made in that department, and there's definitely some services revenue potential if they decided to become more of a brokerage account. Anyway, I'll keep reading. It says Apple could replicate its success with Apple Card and offer low-free, private, secure, and simple brokerage accounts and present integrated information on cost basis, market value, gain, and loss. In addition, Apple could offer trading services similar to Robinhood and robo-advisory services like Wealthfront. So that's pretty much all they had to say about Stocks Plus, but personally, I don't think it would be a bad idea at all, because Robinhood is kind of the standard like go-to investment app for casual, like up-and-coming investors, probably because it's so simple, and the way they design their user interface and the way the app is designed is very elegant and very approachable to the average person, whereas an app like Vanguard, which is actually what me and my wife use, the UI is not pretty. It's very, design wise, it's kind of clunky and it's kind of cluttered, and it definitely doesn't have like a super minimal UI like Robinhood does. But there's a primary reason me and my wife use Vanguard and not Robinhood. It's because Robinhood has had tons of security breaches. It's been awful, and I've had several friends that have been impacted by those server outages Robinhood has had, and cybersecurity issues with Robinhood. So I do have a Robinhood account, but I've never put any money into it. I've never bought or sold any stocks with Robinhood. We just do everything through Vanguard because, at least from our research, it was a way more stable, way more secure, very low fee for buying different transactions. I'm no financial expert, so don't take my advice. There's probably scandals Vanguard's been caught in the past. I don't know. But all I'm saying is I've read way too many stories of Robinhood going wrong or their servers going out and people missing out on gains. So Robinhood looks pretty, but has been somewhat unreliable and less secure. Whereas I think if Apple wanted to do Stocks Plus, they would have a decent chance at making something simple and easy and clean like Robinhood, but with Apple's benefit of being more secure, more private, and encrypted end-to-end, not selling your data or anything. Most people, I don't think, pay for Robinhood or Vanguard, though. Those are free brokerage accounts. You can sign up for them for no money. But if Apple did a Stocks Plus thing, they could easily bake in. Robinhood has a gold membership that offers a few other things. So Apple could definitely compete with that if they wanted to. And, they do include the Stocks app on every iOS device. Even if you're not an investor, they still keep stocks there for whatever reason. But that's the one thing that the analyst listed that I was like, yeah, I could see Apple maybe getting into the brokerage market. But other than that, everything else sounded stupid. I think they listed something like Health Plus and Maps Plus. I might be completely clueless here, but I don't know of any navigational service people subscribe to monthly. But at the same time, Apple acquired Dark Sky. That was a weather app people subscribe to, and I didn't understand that. I'm like, I've never been in that bad of a situation where I'm like, I need to know what the weather's going to be, that I'm going to pay money to get more accurate weather. Health Plus just sounds like a bundle. What's in it other than Fitness Plus? What would Health Plus do? Would it just be like tips and tricks throughout the day? Let me check the article here. Fable says, if you do anything on Xpeng, focus on their R&D spending, vertical integration, building their own cars, insanely low price points. Okay, I will definitely keep that in mind. You seem to know a lot about finances. How come? I don't. I really don't. I'm really an amateur in this field. I just probably know slightly more than the average Apple sheep, so that might make it. I don't know much about this. Trust me. I assure you, I know very little. My wife knows way more than I do on this stuff. That's probably where I heard most of it. The report also tentatively outlines two additional services, provides much less information on what forms they would take. Maps Plus could present advanced suggestions for destinations based on desired outcome and be heavily integrated into the Apple Car. No. Sorry, I don't. Loop Ventures, I don't know who you guys are, but no. don't give Apple ideas. They're going to create monthly subscriptions that we didn't even have before, but Apple's going to be like, oh, we'll find a way to do it. And then it says Health Plus could leverage the data Apple currently gathers via its health app and present an offering that moves into digital healthcare and telemedicine. So Apple's getting into the healthcare market now? I don't know. I don't know enough about it. I just switched my healthcare plans though. Apple doesn't collect health data. They do. You can opt in for that. They offer that. They've had like heart rate studies and like running studies and that kind of thing. Healthcare is very heavily regulated. Yeah. I don't know. It's messy. But keep in mind, guys, this is not a leak. Again, this is not someone from the inside suggesting this is going to happen. This was literally just one person saying Apple might do this someday. So I don't believe them. Oh, hold on. They're gonna buy Hyundai. Oh, I saw that report. Let me respond to Nick here. Let's see. Okay, they're gonna buy Hyundai. So this report came out yesterday, and it was apparently confirmed, which we use tentatively, but Apple was in talks with Hyundai, and Hyundai confirmed that they were talking with Apple about mass production, but let me look over. According to a Korean site, Korean Economic Daily, Apple's planning to work with Hyundai on the upcoming Apple car, but keep in mind the report here is still suggesting that we're at least 5 to 7 years away. Reports that Hyundai again revised its statement, removing the reference to other automakers. A few hours later, it issued another revision that omits Apple completely. We've been receiving requests for potential cooperation from various companies regarding development of autonomous EVs, reads the latest version. No decisions have been made, as decisions are in the early stage. So something to keep in mind is that nothing has been agreed upon, and the fact that they have issued a revision now to not include Apple in their statement is not good, in my opinion. It probably means that Hyundai was making comments that they weren't supposed to be making. And no, this does not confirm it's coming out. It just means that Apple's thinking about it. Basically, what the news was is basically Apple said, Apple basically just came forward and said, hey, Hyundai, how much would it cost? Or, like what kind of products or what kind of tech could you mass produce for us? And here's why I'm here to tell you that's probably not a good thing if your hope is that Apple is going to compete with Tesla. If Apple was to make a competitive car with Tesla, they would have to be more vertically integrated with the mass production of it. And if they're looking for partners to outsource mass production, horizontal integration always results in higher prices. It has to. That's why iPhones have been more expensive for OLED displays, whereas Samsung can make OLED displays on very affordable phones, because Samsung's more vertically integrated with mass production. Apple is not. So if Apple is trying to outsource production, as in they're not interested in building them themselves, that means this means that Hyundai's going to have to get a cut, because Apple's going to have to pay Hyundai to build the vehicles, and then Apple's going to add their profit margin on top of Hyundai's cut because they want to have integrated design or the way their car works. So it means that if the Apple car does end up happening, still don't think it will, but if it does end up happening, it's going to have a very hard time being price competitive with other companies like XPeng or Tesla, or Ford, or probably GM, VW, all of which are going to be more vertically integrated with their mass production. So yeah, what is highly more likely to outcome of this is some sort of, CarPlay integration in a Hyundai car. The idea of it just being from the ground up, Apple branding, no other company being labeled on the outside of the car, but Hyundai just happens to make them. I would say unlikely. And if the reports have changed this much in the past week, I mean, it was just like 7 days ago. It was like literally just a week ago, someone was like, Apple car is way ahead of schedule, and they're going to start producing it later in 2021. By September of 2021, they're going to start producing it. And then the next minute, someone's like, actually, Routers or whoever it was, Routers, I don't know how to pronounce the name, but Routers was like, hey, actually, Apple Car production is about 3 or 4 years away, so we'll see the Apple Car by 2024. Then Ming Chi Kuo comes forward and says, no, not 2024. It's actually going to be more like 2028. And then Bloomberg comes forward and says, no, it's going to be 2027 or 2025. And something I can guarantee you from years and years and years of reading news about Apple products and following Apple leaks and Apple news, there has never once, in all my years of reading, there has never once been a rumor this far in advance that ended up being true. Okay? I want you guys to think about that for a second. The farthest in ahead report I've ever seen was Apple is going to switch to their own silicon in 2020. And I read that in 2017. So that was 3 years. And most of the time, if there's any report about Apple doing something 2 or 3 years in the future, or 5 years in the future, it's never right. It always ends up changing, especially with Project Titan. That was the same journalists in 2015 were telling us Apple cars hitting the streets in 2020, and here we are. Didn't happen. So my point is, if it's been 7 days, it has been a week or two, and Apple car timeline has already fluctuated between 2021, 2028, 2025, 2027, it means very likely Apple has no clue if they're even going to do it. And Tim Cook has even been on the record for stating they will investigate and do research and development for alternative projects and exciting developments that they might not ever end up delivering. Tim995 is agreeing with me here. He said, these in 3+ years is nonsense. Even the leaks about Apple switching to Apple Silicon was wrong dozens of times. Yeah, I'm sure many were wrong. I just remember reading about it in 2017, and they did, in fact, launch in 2020. So I'd say at least one of them was right, but there were a lot of people wrong about it, I'm sure. But I'm saying anytime there's news or analysts saying Apple's going to do something in 5 to 7 years, it's always off. It's always way off. So I am extremely skeptical, and it's not because I want to be. I hope you guys know that. Like, you know, I drive a Hyundai Sonata, so maybe I'm more of an Apple sheep than we realize. I drive a Hyundai. So if Apple ends up buying them, that'd be impressive. But no, like, I want Apple to make a car. Let me be clear on that. It would be the coolest thing in the world, and it would probably be super expensive. And no, I probably would not be able to buy one because it would likely be well over 6 figures. And I really, really want to see with Apple and all of their quirks and all of the things they do great and all of the things they do poorly, all of the things we meme them for and all of the things we love them for. Apple's such a love-hate relationship for the tech community in general because they're like this industry leader in certain departments and they're like groundbreaking in certain technologies, and they change the world with some of their hardware, and some of their hardware is just downright dumb and downright stupid, and we're so confused by so many of the decisions Apple makes that the idea of the Apple engineering team building a car is so fascinating, like to imagine how cool or smart they would make it and also how dumb stupid parts of it would be. Just from like a big fan of Apple products point of view, I would love for them to make a car. But I also have been following Apple for many years. I was following Apple news and I was watching tech videos long before I was making them, way back in 2013, 2012. And there are a whole lot of leaks and a whole lot of rumors I've read that don't end up happening. And I just want to preface that because I don't want everybody reading reports or reading headlines and just instantly assuming that means it's confirmed, that means it's real, because the vast majority of stuff I've read about Apple doesn't end up happening. So I'm trying to keep expectations realistic with the Apple car. Same way I'm trying to keep expectations realistic with the iPad mini, which sounds like it's going to suck with the 8.4-inch display, but still the home button, still the big forehead and chin. Such a missed opportunity. But here's the thing. There's a whole lot of credibility for some reason. There's like instant credibility added to any news report or any leak, even if it's not a real leak. Like even if it's just because it's new. Just because some new information comes out, everyone just instantly wants to believe it and say, this is real, this is happening, it's confirmed. But then later we can have more reports or we can have more news or more leaks come forward that discredit the old ones. Now everyone believes that. And it can change on a dime. That's what I mean. There was like one report last week even just saying Apple Car could come out in 2021 and now it's 2028. You know, like how quickly is it changing? Um, to the point that when people see headlines and when people see top line, Apple partnering with Hyundai to make an EV, they're just like, oh, that means it's happening. It's real. It's good. It's confirmed. It's like, try to be realistic about it, because I think it's safe to say the Apple car is unlike anything else Apple has ever made. It's not really similar to any other product. It's like everything Apple has transitioned into has had similarities with previous fields. So, they made Macintosh and they made the desktop computers, and then they transitioned to laptops, which were kind of like desktops, but now they got batteries and you can take them with you. And then they then they made the Newton, which was a bit of a computer with a battery, and but it's a different user input. And then they start moving into the music player industry with the iPod, and that has a battery and a computer in it. And then that transitions to iPhones, and then it transitions to iPads, and then in time comes Apple Watches and AirPods, and they all have some similarities. But making the jump to a car, sure, it has a battery and it has a computer, but there's a whole lot more to it than transitioning from making iPhones to making watches. There's a lot of carryover technology that's like, okay, we know how to make efficient silicon, we know how to make touch displays, but with a car, there's all these different divisions that Apple has the capital. They have the money for it. I know that, but I just feel like Apple is not a huge risk taker anymore, and it's not a bad thing. When you're a $1 trillion company, it's dangerous to take big risks like that. And Apple has certain profit margins they want to hit, and EVs are not very profitable. So them making a car in 2027 does not give them any type of advantage or competitive strength over really anyone. Considering anybody who exists right now is ahead of Apple because they're at least closer to mass production. Yeah, but it's funny to see how the stock reacts. That's the other thing. I feel like there's a lot of financial incentive for people to lie about these reports, right? Because you can literally just post an article that says Apple partnering with Hyundai for the Apple car, and now the stock goes up. Even if it's like 7 years away, people like, I don't know. Apple ecosystem doesn't really add to a car beyond CarPlay. I agree. Yeah, I don't really know what else you can add with the ecosystem besides CarPlay. So if Apple's already allowing CarPlay on all these other competitors' vehicles, what would the Apple car have that separates it from everything else? That's a bit of a difference here. Like, imagine if before the iPhone came out, right, Apple actually developed iOS and let third-party cell phone makers put iOS on their devices. That's kind of an equivalent of what we have right now. Apple's already outsourcing CarPlay and CarKey. Yeah, exactly. CarKey and CarPlay are being outsourced and made available to third-party automakers. But imagine if iOS was available on other phones before the iPhone came out. Like, you could get iOS on a BlackBerry. Man, that's a weird alternate reality, but imagine if they did that and then released the iPhone. People would be like, oh, it's not as impressive. We've had iOS before. Apple's just making hardware for iOS now. So sure, I'm well aware they could make some crazy displays on the inside and make it curved in 5K and high pixel density and all that. But I mean, Apple doesn't manufacture their own display, so even that wouldn't really be that exclusive. Apple Airlines Plus coming later. Same goes for iPhone in 2022. We'll have this or that. This stuff pretty much never ends up true, even if it's only 2 years. Yeah, I agree. Wasn't there some sort of iPod thing on a Motorola phone that wasn't very successful? There was. I know which one you're talking about, but you can't make the same claim with CarPlay. CarPlay is pretty popular. I know a lot of people that like CarPlay, and it is pretty widespread, and it's been available for years. I don't know when that... I think it was just like a Motorola phone that had support for iTunes, that you could load music onto it, and they did that. I don't remember how many years before the iPhone came out, but I do remember Snazzy Labs did a really great video on it. The Moto Rocker E5. Yeah. It would be interesting to see an Apple car, but I don't think it would be good. Same Cosminator. I'm for like compelling, game-changing electric vehicles. It's fine if you want to make a super, $100,000 electric sedan that's super luxurious and stuff. Like, there's nothing wrong with making those. It just doesn't change very much in the industry, which makes it hard to get excited for, which is why Apple making their own car, yeah, I agree. It would be interesting. It'd be like, oh, I wonder how they would do it. But I would almost rather just let the Apple engineers and the design team let's just lock them in a room and say, design a car, but then, we don't have to mass produce it or anything. Just design one and I'll look at it and you can tell me, just, I know Johnny Ive's not there anymore, but just give me the Johnny Ive idea of a vehicle and I would be like, wow, that's interesting, but then you don't have to mass produce it. That's okay. Because Apple would have nothing on lowering prices of batteries and making stuff cheaper and more affordable and that kind of thing. Mike says, I'd hope if Apple comes out with their car that Sony goes through with their prototype. Yeah, I would say Sony's probably closer to making a car than Apple. Sony at least made one, and they showed it off to the world. Apple might never show anything off to the world. Yeah, it's very difficult to be profitable with electric vehicles. So if Apple's looking to outsource and they're talking with Hyundai for production, it's not going to be a very cheap car. I can tell you that. So it would not be the type of thing that is a Tesla killer or a Tesla competitor even. It would be more of a Lucid Air competitor probably if it does exist. But if it's not coming out for 7 years, then so much can change, so many projects and leader heads and, Tim Cook might not even be the CEO in 7 years. He could retire next year. He could retire this year for all we know. So acting like we know what Apple's going to do in 7 years is just silly because we've never been right about it. Like, how many people were accurate about the iPad coming out in 2003? That's the equivalent to what we're doing right now. Go back and look at 2003 Apple leaks and Apple rumors and see how close we were to guessing that by 2010 Apple would have a $500 9.7-inch tablet. Like, they were not accurate back then. Or in the year 2000, Apple making a phone, how accurate were those reports? Yeah, Brandon Iceberg. I think that's more likely. It would be a better idea for Apple to partner with one particular car brand, say Audi, then have excellent compatibility and integration with the ecosystem. I mean, they're not even that far away. They've already partnered with a lot of companies for car key and CarPlay and that kind of stuff. So it's not even that big a stretch. If they did that now, it wouldn't be terribly different from what they've already done. Let's see. It was 2005 and could hold 1,000 songs only. So it was 2 years before the iPhone came out, which was not that much time. Do I have an iPad mini? I think I have an old iPad mini 1 that my grandma got rid of. She was like, I don't need this anymore. So I was like, I'll take it for my collection or whatever. But it's in a box somewhere. I think it's in this box on my desk, but I would have to pull the camera off it, and I'm not going to do that. So yes, I have an iPad mini 1, but the last iPad mini I reviewed was the Mini 5 back in March of 2019. It's been a while. And I loved it. I wish it had Face ID, and I wish it was, more like the iPad Pro with one size bezel all the way around. There's a lot of futuristic features that would be great on it, but yeah, it would be cool if they did that. But now today's report sounds like it's not happening. But yeah, I don't have an iPad mini that I use regularly. I just have an old iPad mini, just like I have an original iPhone. I have an OG iPhone in a box somewhere. I don't use it for anything, but I have it. So that hopefully answers your question. Let's see. Cosmonator's in a push. My condolences. Let's see. I keep seeing these articles about how Apple's vertical integration will make the Apple car uniquely profitable, as if Apple already has everything. Like Apple doesn't have their own factory, so there's no way the first car would be price competitive. Yeah, not likely. Knowing also, guys, it's Apple. AirPods Max, Pro Stand, Pro Display XDR, Mac Pro wheels. I feel like more than likely, if Apple were to make a car, it would be so that they can retain their luxury brand. They literally make one for everybody. They make a limited edition Apple car that costs $3 million and only one person can buy it. But it would sell. Some big, rich Apple fanatic would buy it for sure. That's it. Apple Car Edition. Mike says, only Apple leak I was ever accurate on was the iTouch, but that was after watching a whole bunch of sci-fi movies, then listening to my OG iPod. Did they ever call it the iTouch? Or was it iPod Touch? Is that the difference? Brandon says, do you think we will see a different Apple chip in the 16-inch MacBook towards the end of the year? A different Apple chip? Yeah, I mean it'll be Apple Silicon, but I would be very surprised if they put the M1 in it. I bet it's going to be some other name they can choose of, but not the same chip. So the current M1 chip has 4 high-powered cores, 4 high-efficiency cores. So you use the high-efficiency cores when you're doing basic stuff, and that prolongs battery, and then the high-performance cores you use when you're doing video editing and high-performance stuff. But it sounds like, if rumors are somewhat accurate, that Apple, the next Apple Silicon chip for the Mac is going to have like 8 or 12 high performance cores and still 4 efficiency cores. So that could be like twice to 3 times as fast as the M1 chip, which sounds crazy. I know it's not exactly linear. It just gives you a bit of a ballpark. It's not exactly like 12 cores is 3 times as fast as 4 cores. It's a little bit variation about that, but yeah, 16-inch MacBook I definitely think will have groundbreaking performance. Likely that can easily beat that of my iMac Pro and probably beat some cheese grater Mac Pros in terms of performance. So yeah, I'm excited for those. Very tempted. But I think I need a desktop. After reviewing the MacBook Air with M1, I decided, you know what? I don't think a laptop fits my workflow very well. I need a desktop of some kind. So the iMac is still my top priority, but I would get a 16-inch MacBook Pro if they decide to price the iMac stupidly high. You know, I'm not interested in dropping $6,000 on an iMac or more. If it's $9,000 and has great specs, it's like, okay, that's nice, but I don't need a new computer that bad. Even if it's the coolest design with Face ID and everything, I can't justify $9,000. I could justify 5, maybe, 5.5 if it's really, really good, but 4 high performance cores and 32 high efficiency cores. I don't know if there's an advantage to having a bunch of high efficiency cores, but I'm no expert. I think 4 would be enough. If it's enough for a MacBook Air, I don't know why you need more efficiency cores on a different machine. But yeah, I would go with the 16-inch MacBook Pro if it was a lot better bang for your buck. If there was a good way to get decent specs for sub 5K, I would do that. But Apple kind of prices themselves out of the competition sometimes. So like, I wasn't really interested in getting a pair of over-ear headphones, but the fact that AirPods Max were $550 just completely destroyed any chance of me recommending them for how they're catered towards just being wireless headphones. But yeah, if they pull like a Pro Stand thing and they're like, here's the new iMac that supports the Pro Stand. By the way, yes, you have to buy a Pro Stand. The iMac base price is $5,000, and then you need to spend an extra $1,000 on the stand. If they do that, I'm going to be like, no, sorry. I'll just live with a 16-inch MacBook Pro and use it with an external monitor. But yeah, I hope that's not what they do, because the whole beauty, the whole genius of the iMac, the reason I'm such a big fan of the iMac is because the idea was that you would just have one device, you pull it out of a box and you plug it in and you turn it on and it just starts working. And I loved that original viewpoint. I've never been a fan of having a separate computer tower. A lot of people do that. It's probably one of the bigger reasons I'm a fan of Apple's. There's just one power cord. It looks more simple. It looks more clean on a desk. You don't have to have this giant brick sitting alongside your desk. And I know the gaming community is all comfortable and used to that, but I don't know. It feels like unnecessary. I'd rather not have the big thing underneath my desk and have to plug in all these HDMI cables. And that goes for Apple too. I was not terribly in love with the Mac Pro. I'm not a fan of it, but even if I did want to get one, just having it sit on my floor collecting dust and sitting there, I don't know. I'd rather just have one all-in-one design that sits like iPad on a stick. That's cooler to me. That's more interesting. So because it's supposed to be all one complete package, I'm really hoping that's not what they're doing with the iMac, and they do price it reasonably. The transition to Apple Silicon should make it better bang for your buck. It's not like if they put Apple Silicon in the MacBook Air but then made it twice the price, we'd all be annoyed by that. So hopefully that's not what happens. But I find that monitors last a lot longer than computers. My 1080p monitors lasted about 10 years before I switched to 4K. That's interesting. I haven't noticed that, but I guess I don't buy that many monitors. Like my iMac from 2011 was still rocking a functional display. Have you heard about the condensation issues with AirPods Max? I have. I haven't really needed to comment on them because I felt like they were a bad buy and I wouldn't recommend them to anybody anyway. But yeah, there's even more problems, guys. Congrats. There's condensation problems with AirPods Max. So yeah, that's not good. That sucks. Definitely. Yeah. This is why I call BS whenever someone says Apple worked on AirPods Max for 4 or 5 years. Yeah, right. They never found any of this stuff in testing. Yeah, no, they were rushed. They were definitely rushed at the last minute to get them out before the holidays. There's no doubt in my mind about that. I don't think that they worked on them for 4 years just to launch them a couple weeks after the Mac event with condensation issues and supply chain issues and that case. I'm sorry, there's no way for 4 years they tried a bunch of different cases and that's the one they settled with. Don't think so. That felt rushed at the last minute, in my opinion. But part of the reason the Mac Pro costs so much is because Intel Xeon prices are done. I'm sure they are. I know I've talked about it in the past, but it's hilarious to me that, when the iMac Pro came out, there were people thinking it's a trap. Don't buy the iMac Pro because it's just supposed to hold over the professionals until the Mac Pro comes out. When the Mac Pro comes out, that'll be game changing. Now it turns out if you waited for the Mac Pro, you basically got screwed over because it didn't launch until the very end of 2019. They finally launch it and it goes from $6,000 to $50,000. So people start dropping $40,000-$30,000 on the Mac Pro. And then like 1 to 2 years later, they replace it with Apple Silicon. That's going to be like 1/10 the price and be faster. And yet you're stuck with a $30,000 cheese grater that's slower because it runs Intel. And who knows, might not even get as many software updates as the Apple Silicon version. Yeah, that's too bad. Apple worked on them for 4 to 5 years, but had to redo them several times because the initial prototypes cost like $1,000. I don't really get what that means, though. I don't think that there was just one dedicated team working on a pair of over-ears for 4 years. I bet there was a division of the AirPods team that was toying around with over-ears, but they probably weren't very good, and they were put on hold for months at a time. It's like, oh, okay, we're going to work on AirPods Pro now. And just occasionally on the weekends, they would tinker around with the over-ear headphones, but for the most part, their attention was diverted elsewhere. So I don't buy this whole, like, there was a team of guys that was working on just this pair of headphones every day for 4 years. Like, I doubt it. And they've had Beats over ears for a while, yeah. Would you buy a 6K iMac that's like the Surface Studio? If it's $6,000, or do you mean the 6K resolution? I don't need much higher than 5K. I mean, if the price is good, I don't mind 6K. But if the iMac Pro came with a 1440p option, I would have opted for that, especially if it was cheaper. Personally, from a 27-inch display sitting on your desk, from an average viewing distance, I've used my iMac alongside 1440p monitors, and it's very difficult to tell the difference, in my opinion. I think it's pretty hard to even notice. So $6,000, and it'd be hard to recommend. I guess it would depend on how good the specs are, but I would be heavily... So what is that? Heavily? Is that a word? I was trying to think, what 2 words am I mixing? Heavily and easily. I would be heavily tempted to just opt for something cheaper that still has a great performance, because iMac Pro isn't that slow. So I'm not really looking to upgrade it just so that I can have way faster. I mean, I want it to be faster, but I don't need like substantially faster. I don't know if I would drop 6,000 on it. Maybe. I mean, if it was really perfect, that's the trick. Like, it would have to be no compromises. That was the one thing I was saying about AirPods Max. Like, I could defend it if there was absolutely no compromise and they were just the best pair of headphones and nothing about them sucked. But there were several things about AirPods Max that did suck, so that's why I couldn't recommend it. But if there was an iMac that looked like the Surface Studio, and it had Face ID, and it had great storage options, and it had the top-of-the-line Apple Silicon, and it had great I/O, that's another important thing to me. Like, it has to have at least 4 USB-C ports, preferably more. If it has Face ID, it has the great display, it has the great silicon, and the great ports, okay, you might be able to convince me to do 6K. But if there's any compromises anywhere, I wouldn't do it. So, like, if there was only 2 USB-C ports, nope, not interested. If there wasn't Face ID, Yeah, not really, not super interested. If the silicon is a little dumbed down and it maxes out at 2 terabytes, and you can't get any more than 2 terabytes of SSD, yeah, all those things would kind of persuade me away, and I'd be like, okay, I could do 6,000 on a perfect ideal machine, but if I'm making compromises, no, I'm just gonna save money and go with a 16-inch MacBook Pro. Um, would you buy the 27-inch iMac with M1X? Yeah, that's the plan. Like, out of all the iMacs and all the Macs that have yet to be switched to Apple Silicon, the one I'm most interested in is the larger sized iMac. I don't want to go much smaller than 27 inches because I did use a 32-inch iMac, not iMac, 32-inch 4K monitor for a little while, and I really liked it and I enjoyed it. So, um, trying to go more minimal now, just having one monitor, just the iMac Pro on my desk. And it's a little smaller, but it's just about the smallest I'm comfortable going. I don't want to go much smaller than 27 inches. So I would be very happy if they made a larger one. If there was like an edge-to-edge 32-inch iMac, I'd be all over that, especially with the M1X or the latest gen silicon. But yeah, a 24-inch iMac, it'll be cool. I might buy one just to review it, but I'd probably return it. I wouldn't want to keep it. I don't know. You know, my opinions and tastes change over time. Maybe I try the 24-inch iMac and I love it and I just decide to keep it, but probably not. My guess is if there is a 32-inch or 27-inch iMac updated design with thin bezels and Apple Silicon, that would be my go-to. Hopefully it's under 6K. If the Apple Silicon 16-inch MacBook Pro and iMac were a similar value performance proposition, which would you go for? Does portability matter or not really? No, I definitely the iMac. iMac is my go-to because I don't have much use for portability. The only reason I was suggesting I might go with the 16 inches because that would be great performance for pretty great value. If it's anything like the Apple Silicon in the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro that they recently launched, it would mean that the 16-inch MacBook Pro wouldn't be that much different in price, meaning it starts at $2,400 and you can spec it out to be around $4,000 or $5,000. That would get I could get by with that. You know, it's not that I can't get by with a laptop. I just prefer a desktop if possible. I'm just not willing to spend over $6,000 for a big fancy desktop. So, yeah, I'm definitely leaning towards iMac. If they do what I want them to with the iMac, that's my go-to. I don't really have much need for a laptop. I would just go with it. If I do end up getting the 16-inch MacBook Pro, I'm probably just going to turn it into a dock, and I'll have a BenQ 32-inch 4K monitor, and I use that for most of my editing. And then the MacBook Pro will just kind of sit there with the lid closed and everything. And then on occasion, maybe I'd pull it out of the dock, but for the most part, it would just kind of sit there and just be my tower, my thin tower. Let's see. Chris Otham says, I've just joined. Can someone catch me up? All right, next iPad mini is coming out in March, and it sucks. It'll have a larger display with thinner bezels, but it still has a home button, still has lightning, and still has a forehead and chin. Probably not that impressive cameras. What else? Apple Car. There's lots of people talking about it, but it's probably not going to happen, and we should remain realistic about it. And Apple's talked with Hyundai about production, but they haven't confirmed anything, and there's no agreement that's been reached or anything. So don't believe the Apple Car is coming out, and I want to get an iMac with Apple Silicon in it that looks like an iPad Pro on a stick. That's my ideal Mac. And if it's too expensive, I'll go with the 16-inch MacBook Pro. There you go. You're caught up. Thunderbolt dock with the lid closed, then it is like a desktop. Exactly. That's what I would do. In fact, that's what I did do, actually. Before I bought my iMac Pro, I had a 15-inch 2016 MacBook Pro, space gray, and I really liked it. Not a whole lot of issues with it. The one problem I had, which was not a problem with the machine, it was just a problem with the model I bought. I bought the cheapest possible version, which I don't think they even have a Mac in that category anymore. But at the time, you could get a 15-inch MacBook Pro for $2,000. Later on, they changed it, and now the base price for the larger MacBook Pros is like $2,400. I don't know when they changed it, but back in 2016, the larger size MacBook Pro started at $2,000. And I was actually going to get the 13-inch MacBook Pro. I was saving up for that, and that was pretty much all I could afford. I was going to get a slightly higher spec with a nicer CPU and a bit more storage. And I was planning on buying the 13-inch MacBook Pro with Touch Bar that came out in 2016. And I was like, cool, cool. I'm saving up money. I'm working at the Mandarin Ranch. You know, I'm doing client work and doing wedding videos for people. I'm saving up all my money. And I actually made a little bit more money than I thought I was going to make. Um, I actually think that was the year my YouTube channel started generating revenue. So because the channel started making a little bit more income, I was able to opt for a bit more expensive version. I'm checking outside because I thought I heard. I'm waiting for a package. Not anything interesting. It's medicine, but so I had a little bit more money than I thought, and I was like, "Ooh, man, I could actually spend $2,000 on a new MacBook." So why don't I just opt for the larger 15-inch one, because that one has a dedicated GPU and it'll be faster. But the one compromise I had to make when opting for the 15-inch MacBook Pro was that it was going to be 256 gig instead of 512, which is what I was planning on getting. And I was like, 256, I could get by with 256. You know, I'll just buy an external hard drive and, you know, offload some of the larger files. And back then, I could kind of get by with 256 because I wasn't recording on Blackmagic cameras like this one or that one back there. And all my videos were 1080 at 60, which was a lot smaller file size. But then when I opted for the Blackmagic later, because I was like, I want to get a better camera that has interchangeable lenses. I was using these old fixed lens Lumix cameras, and they were okay. I mean, they had decent specs for the money. I think they were like, this is terrible now, but at the time, the Lumix FZ300, I think it was called, it was like $600, and it could do 4K at 30, 1080 at 60. Which at the time was pretty good and hard to find. Most of the time you had to spend over $1,000 if you wanted a camera that could do 1080 at 60 and 4K video and that stuff. So I bought it, and it was all right. You know, the resolution and stuff was good, but the image quality and the bokeh and the sensor was not fantastic. And of course, there was only one lens. You couldn't change out the lenses. So I was like, okay, I want a new camera, so I ended up going with that Blackmagic, and that can, of course, that's what all my tech videos and EV videos, they're all shot on that thing. That does 4K at 60, and even when the files are compressed, they're huge. So I knew that as soon as I got the Blackmagic, I was like, okay, I can't get by with 256 gigs anymore. So that's, of course, when the iMac Pro entered the picture, and I bought that, and now that's what I've been using ever since. We're past 3 years now, so we're coming up on 4 years with the iMac Pro. And it's still doing pretty good, I gotta say. Like, little choppy in Final Cut here and there, but still exporting videos very quickly and very reliable, doing the streams on them. The internet is not reliable, but the iMac Pro has aged very, very well considering how much heavy use I've put on it. So Apple needs to start sending me review units. That would be fun. I would love it if they did, but yeah, I bet everybody there's a big list of people. There's probably way more people that are more deserving of free Apple products that have a more larger following of me than I do. Let's see. Would you buy a 16-inch MacBook Pro with 2 terabytes, 32 gigs of RAM, and a 32-inch 4 terabyte, what? 32-inch monitor, 4 terabytes, and 32 gigs of RAM, both with 4 USB-C and Face ID? You're going to have to Crazy Unknown, you're going to have to rearrange that message. I don't know what you mean. 16-inch MacBook Pro with 2 terabytes, 32 gigs of RAM, and a 32-inch 4 terabyte, 32 gigs of RAM, both with 4 USB-C and Face ID. I wouldn't buy both if that's what you're asking. And 12 terabytes, 30. No, I don't need 2 new computers. I just need one. If your camera hasn't changed since you got the iMac Pro, why is Final Cut choppier now? I don't know if it's just Big Sur. Or, you know, I do know that processors can age in time. They can slow down, and SSDs, when you read and write and read and write and read and write, they get older and they wear down a little bit. So I don't know exactly why it's a bit more choppy. But it's not like unbearably bad. It's not like the computer is unoperable. I can't use it anymore. Like, it still runs fine. When I used the Apple Silicon on the MacBook Air, I noticed how smooth everything was and how little latency there was when editing or changing the speed or adding text, and I can just hit play and it instantly starts playing. Whereas on the Final Cut, just hangs a little bit. And the design is, you know, classic, but it's also kind of up there. dust in the heat sink means it overheats quicker. Could be it, but I don't think it's overheating very much because the fans, I know what they sound like when it's hot, and they don't sound like that very often. If I do an OBS live stream while I'm exporting in Final Cut, then I will hear it get hot. Then the fans kick in and it sounds like a jet. But when I'm editing, you can't even hear the fans. So I don't think it's a heating issue. But that's okay. Don't worry about the iMac Pro. I don't even think we're gonna sell it or trade it in now. My wife expressed some interest in keeping it, and I told her, like, well, I don't need 2 iMacs, so if we're getting a new one, I would rather just trade this one in or sell it to offset the cost. And she was like, no, I'd rather just keep it. And I'm like, okay, it's gonna make the iMac more expensive, but okay, let's just keep it. So don't worry about the iMac. I have no interest in opening it up or trying to clean it, or it's fine. It's getting by fine. And I'm a tech reviewer, okay? I gotta buy new stuff anyway, so the fact that this is running Intel just makes it instantly uninteresting compared to whatever Apple has in store for the next iMac. Even if it's a boring design, as long as it has Apple Silicon in it, I'm interested. So, okay, he's going to try this again. Would you buy a 16-inch MacBook Pro with 2 terabytes and 32 gigs of RAM and a 32-inch 4 terabyte 32 RAM, both with 4 USB-C and Face ID, for $5,000? Or 128 gigs of RAM, 12 terabytes, 32-inch with 4 USB-C and Face ID, and for 5. I don't need 2. So whatever the option is for just buying one, that one. I have no desire for having an iMac and a MacBook. There's really no need for that in my life. I used to think there was when I was like, well, maybe if I go on a trip or I go on vacation and I want to edit videos on the go. But the last time I did that, it was horrible. So now I've decided, like, if I'm on vacation, I just want to be on vacation. I don't want to work while I'm on vacation. So I'd rather just have my Mac stay put and not go anywhere. The sentence doesn't make sense, but I understand what he's asking. He's asking if I would rather get a MacBook and an iMac with okay specs, or would I rather just get one iMac with great specs? And to answer your question, just one iMac with great specs. I have 4 terabytes on my MacBook. Nice. I got 2 terabytes on the iMac Pro, which at the time sounded like a lot, because I was coming from a MacBook Pro with 256. But now that I'm filming and editing so much more content all the time, I'm doing, 4K at 60 EV videos and tech videos every day, and I'm doing vlogs, and I'm doing Saturday shorts and comedy skits, and so much more content is being produced that I want to make sure the next Mac I get is like maximum amount of storage. So my hope is 8 terabytes. That's what I'm shooting for. Even if it's really expensive, the next Mac I buy, I plan on owning for a very long time. Just like this one. It's lasted over 3 years and it's still kicking. It's doing great. But the only reason there's a great motivating factor to upgrade it is because, for one, the design is pretty dated. Not much has changed with the iMac design in over a decade now. So if there's a new iMac with a new design, that would be a good motivator. And also, iMac Pro is still running Intel. So if the new iMac, of course, it will be running Apple Silicon. That's a great reason to upgrade. And in time, I don't see a huge reason, unless there's some quality control or technical difficulties with it. I don't see a point in upgrading the next iMac for another, maybe longer, maybe like 4 or 5 years. If it has tons of storage, it has Apple Silicon, which we know is going to age great, and it's going to have plenty of performance and speed. If the I/O is good and all that, then yeah, I'm planning on keeping the next Mac for a long, long time. Still strange to me that we don't have 1 terabyte iPhones. I feel like not that many people would utilize them, to be honest with you. I know people that buy the 512 gig iPhones, and I know that they may use a bunch of storage, but they don't utilize it, is what I'm saying. Normally, the people I know that buy the 512 gig version of iPhones are putting an absurd amount of local files and local movies and TV shows on it that they don't actually use very regularly. And you can get by with just streaming it off of Wi-Fi. And I still think 512 is a lot for a phone. I don't know what you're putting on a phone that is filling up 512, but well, Samsung tried it. I remember with the Galaxy S10, they had a 1 terabyte configuration, and then they got rid of it with the S20. The S20 didn't have a 1 terabyte option. I think it had expandable storage, but it didn't have a 1 terabyte at checkout. And I think it was because the demand for the 1 terabyte model was so low. There wasn't that many people buying it. So my guess is it's the same with Apple. They probably don't see a huge amount of demand with the 512. They likely see a lot with the mid-tier ones like 128 or 256 gig. That's probably where a lot of people go, but I bet 512 is more on the low end for demand. I mean, there's nothing against it. I don't if they want to make a 1 terabyte model, that's fine. I won't be mad if they do. I'm just saying I totally get why they don't. It makes sense to me why they don't. Yeah, hopefully there's no dust in the heatsink though. Let's see. Intel considering outsourcing to TSMC. That would be funny. Intel's just like, can you make our chips? Yeah, Tim Cook made the Apple car himself. That's right. Tim Cook was just making AirPods Max all by himself for 4 years. With other people in the car, able to add stuff to the queue. What? That just sounds like a CarPlay feature. Huh. Oh, well. Yeah, I think it would make trips to the Apple Store a lot more fun if they did have a car. That's not a great reason to make one, I know, but Tim Cook's just like, well, EVs are so hard to make profitable, so we just really don't see the point in making one. And I'm like, yeah, but Tim, people would have fun at the Apple Store, right? Imagine if you could go to the Apple Store and get in the back of the Apple car and pretend you're driving it, play with the screen, people sit in the back seat, look through the glass roof and all that. That would be fun, right? I mean, that's what people do with Tesla showrooms and the Lucid Air showrooms, which I've been to. You get to just have in a little shop. You can look at a car and sit in it and check it out. Especially cars we can't afford, you know, when malls and stuff put out supercars and Lamborghinis and that kind of thing. That kind of stuff's just fun. So if you had that, which Apple stores are already really fun to look into, why not? You know, I could see that being fun. Give me a reason to go to the Apple Store. I haven't been to an Apple Store in well over a year now. It's been a long time. Can you guys believe I've still never seen the Pro Display XDR? Opportunity has never presented itself. They don't have them at every Apple Store. They're only at certain sized ones, and the closest one to me is pretty tiny. And last time I went there, they didn't have it. So, yeah, I've never seen it after all this talk about it. Maybe my eyes will just start tearing up as soon as I eventually see it, and I'm like, yes, the price is actually justified all along. It's so beautiful. Maybe I just need to see it. We make an Apple car? No, just one. Yeah. Yeah, we said we were working on Apple car, not Apple cars. There's only one of them. That's enough. I wonder how many people are actually buying like the Mac Pro wheels. How many orders for that did they get a day? You know, is there like a dedicated assembly line that's always making those wheels, or is there not enough demand for $400 wheels? There was probably a bunch when they first launched it, of course, and that's when all the YouTubers had to pick it up and make their videos about it. Like, you guys know you could make the videos about the wheels without buying the wheels. You know that, right? Like, no, we got to buy them. Okay, $400. It's a tax write-off. I got them for a video. And honestly, how often do they use those wheels? I understand wanting a computer on wheels, but they need to lock. If the wheels don't lock, yeah, I completely agree. Why would you want to put your $40,000 Mac on something that can roll away? Because there's a bunch of stuff plugged into the back. So how often are you really going to the back of the Mac Pro, unplugging every port, and then rolling it on a flat surface to some other area that you don't have to pick it up anyway? Like, it's just functionally stupid. The fact that they don't lock is the dumbest thing ever. I don't understand where that came from. When will you battle on the Minecraft server? I need to make time for it. I'm trying to focus more on creating content, and I've kind of put myself out there and established that I'm not a gamer. I tried to make content for the gaming channel for a long time, and I just never found much success with it, never really found my niche or my passion for it. There's games I like playing, and there's games I enjoy, but in 2021, I'm just doing my best to make more videos that I have passionate feelings about. So You still have to move the monitor and stuff. Yeah, you got to move it all in the Mac. um, so yeah, I guess I could just one day when I've got some time to kill, I'll just join the server and battle people, but I'll probably only be in there a few minutes. Games are cool and all, but they're very time consuming. It's kind of hard when your schedule's as packed as mine is end to end to kind of just carve out, yeah, maybe play a game for a couple hours. Like, I don't know. I just don't have time for it. But it's not that I miss it because I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I'm actually really enjoying the past few days of content production. So I'm hoping to keep that up. So I'm not a gamer, but I should. You're right. I should definitely join the server at some point. I do own Minecraft. Mac Pro starts rolling, brings down $6,000 monitor. Someone must have done that, right? The Mac Pro is actually a great way of testing how level your floor is, right? If you let go of it, you can be like, this room is lopsided. They messed it up. Get the construction crews in. That's what they do for the leveler. Instead of checking to see if the floor is level with the little bubble thing, they just bring in a Mac Pro on wheels, stick it on the floor, and they're like, it's rolling. It's rolling one way. Man, to bring this full circle, though, I am so bummed out about the iPad mini. I was reading all the reports about the mini LED 12.9-inch iPad Pro, and I was just like, it doesn't sound that interesting. You know what does sound interesting is the iPad mini. Oh, yeah, there were those reports of the home buttonless iPad mini with the iPad Pro design and all that. And I was really curious about, like, the iPad mini getting a squared off design, USB-C. They could make an Apple Pencil 2 that's shorter so it fits on the side easy. And then today just had to go and ruin all my dreams. Macadakar is like, nope, it's stupid. It's just an iPad mini with a slightly bigger display. That's all. Nothing to be excited for. And I don't know. Yeah, iPad Pro is getting thicker as well. I don't mind that, but it's definitely going to make it a heavy boy. That's for sure. Because the iPad Pro with the Magic Keyboard case is already pretty heavy. But the iPad Pro itself is pretty thin, you know. This on its own is not bad, but I guess the fact that it bends so easily is what people are worried about. So sounds like the mini LED iPad Pro is going to be about 0.5 millimeters thicker. So just a tad thicker on the back. And that, of course, is going to make it more heavy. But probably a bit harder to bend, which, you know, not that Jerry-rig everything's going to care, but there you go. Less bend gate, hopefully. There's a little scuff on it. I'm trying to figure out if this is a chip or if it's a... Oh, it's not a chip. It's just a little dirt got on there somehow. Now the iPad Pro is getting thick. Yeah, it is. Michael is just all the chat. Well, you can say more stuff if you want, or I can just ramble. I don't mind rambling. But now that iPad mini sounds boring, I don't know. I haven't gotten a new iPad since 2018, so I was thinking of getting one this year, but I'm definitely not getting the mini LED iPad Pro if they require me to get a new keyboard case. That's going to be just ridiculous. If they're like, it doesn't work with the old one, I'm just going to, nope. 2018 iPad Pro, still fine, no problem. If mini LED is making it thicker, maybe it will make the MacBook lids thicker too, which could mean better cameras. Wow. That's an interesting chain of events. Yeah, they had to make the iPad Pros a little bit thicker to accommodate mini LED. So if the display lids for the MacBook are thicker, then maybe they can fit in a better camera. Yeah, okay. That kind of makes sense. In a weird backwards sort of way, it kind of makes sense. Have you seen the 9th gen iPad is going to have 10.2-inch display still instead of 10.5? I question the validity of that report. It makes more sense to me that they would reuse the 10.5-inch laminated display. Basically, what they're doing is they're just taking the Air 3 and rebranding it as the budget iPad. Sometimes we get the display sizes off in the leaks and rumors and that kind of thing. Like everyone said the iPad Air 4 was going to be a 10.8-inch display. And then when Apple unveiled it, it's actually 10.9. So it's like slightly off from the leak. So I'm wondering, I'm thinking iPad 9 is going to be 10.5-inch. I don't know. Laminating the 10.2-inch display doesn't make much sense to me, but Chris says, I've just changed from 16-inch MacBook Pro to Mac Mini, and it's so silent and cool. I erased my drive on the 16-inch to sell on, just doing that with the fans kicked up. Oh, yeah. Those MacBooks, man, they kick up the fans quick. Yeah, Mac Mini with the M1 is awesome. If I had to buy a new Mac right now, that's what I would get. If my iMac Pro conked out on me right now and just shut off, couldn't work anymore, I would order a Mac Mini with maxed out specs. You know, best RAM, best storage, all that. M1 chip is pretty good. I could get by. I could run the whole network off the M1 chip if I needed to. I'm not, but I could. Since the iMac Pro is still operational, I don't mind waiting. But if I couldn't wait any longer, that's a solid Mac. I'd like to try it, but that's okay. I tried the M1 chip. I know how it works. Anyways, I appreciate you guys watching. It's been a fun day of content production, but I hope we can chat more in the future. Going to be doing some podcasting tomorrow, hopefully, so stay tuned for that. And thank you for your bits, your Twitch Primes, and all that. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your Friday. Happy Friday, everybody. Go watch the Lab Padre stream. They might do a second Static Fire on Starship. Stay tuned. All right, guys. Bye-bye.